Hello, this is Georgie Dragonfly and Talitha Ferri, who's going to be sharing her journey here at the Cosmic Heart Conversation podcast. So welcome, Talitha. Bring yourself into this space. Let everyone know who you are.
Thank you for having me. My name is Talitha, and my path here on Earth is to just be a channel and a vessel for what is, to be of service to the whole, and to support this divine unfolding and absolute surrender and celebration. And that's manifesting for me right now as me holding spaces for light and sound healing, vocal awakening, and soul code activation. And these are spaces where I support and guide others in reconnecting to and awakening their soul expression and their divine imprinting, and really weaving that back through the system out through the voice, and to transmit and to express that inner essence into the world around them. And this happens in like a very non-linear way, and it's very difficult to actually even kind of put words to it. But that's kind of a general idea of the process.
Beautiful. That's amazing. What you're really bringing through is truly a divine service and something that is a new unfolding in the way in which it's happening. So where did this all start for you with your spiritual practices and journey?
It's very interesting because in my own reflections, I have attempted, I think, to like create a linear sequence from this beginning at some point and then progressing to where it is now. But it really has been a very kind of non-linear unfolding. And I find myself in the spaces I'm in now, that they're the spaces I was in as a child. I grew up in a religious family, but my connection to spirit was always very, very pure. I had a very deep connection to nature and communicated with trees and plants and animals, and was always using light language, even though I didn't call it light language, and was always making up songs, and was very, very just connected to this stream of consciousness that is behind and animating all things. And as I grew up, because of my Christian upbringing, I really attempted to kind of leave all spirituality behind, because I was obviously became disenchanted with the religion. But even that was like, I let go of the religion, but I couldn't let go of the spirituality. And I really tried for some years, like pretended to be an atheist, and I just couldn't do it. So I never actually lost that connection. And I was playing and writing music from the age like 14 or so. And when I was 16, I was playing in cafes, I was playing in restaurants. So music and songwriting and singing was always a part of my life. At that time, my music was very sad and very melancholic, because I was very sad and in a lot of pain. But regardless, even though in those darker periods of my life, and I was using music as a coping mechanism and as a healing tool, I did have that very clear intention and awareness that my voice was for healing myself and for others. So even in spaces that were, sad little bars where people are drinking and you're playing sad singer-songwriter music, and the response I was still receiving from people was, that made me cry, that allowed me to release something really deep, thank you, that was healing. And so even amongst this like distortion, and amongst me kind of having just to integrate this sadness and this heaviness, there was always this very clear pillar of my voice and the healing and the magic that can unfold when I use it. And that really, I realize now looking back, that was just like this thread that I always had, my creativity and my vocal expression. So when I really deepened my connection to spiritual practice and to meditation and to dream work. And I worked a lot with plant medicines. And I was able to integrate a lot of the traumas and shadows that had really haunted me. That just suddenly, it cleared a lot of space, and it allowed me to really reconnect with my essence and my true nature, which really is this really joyful, really deeply, deeply peaceful and content being. And there's really not much heaviness and there's not much sadness. So that's just been a very interesting journey to have fallen so far away from myself, only to reclaim my inner essence. And then my music and my musical expression totally shifted. And I knew that I was supposed to be holding sound healing spaces, which in my own mind, I had always believed I was doing. And I had always had an aversion to having to be on a stage and having to perform for people. And I always felt that was like a very heavy burden to have to entertain someone, when all I wanted to do was have this really deep emotional connection. And actually all I was seeking was that healing space, that integrative space of vulnerability. So when I realized, the more I became integrated into other spiritual communities, that like there's just a space where you don't have the weight of entertaining or performance. You just have total authenticity, total vulnerability. And I was able to just use my voice in these spaces, in small yoga studios and candlelit rooms, and there's no alcohol and there's no distraction. There's just people lying down on yoga mats and receiving the sound and receiving the frequency. And that to me really activated, I think, my path. And so I started holding sound journeys, and I was doing them with my partner, and I was also using my voice in plant medicine spaces. And all of that just really opened and activated this inner essence, this divine imprinting that was just waiting to fully embody and to ground and anchor in. And around that time, of course, the light language came in naturally, and at the time it was like, oh, what a coincidence. But of course it was synchronistic, and it was me calling that in for myself. And what's funny is that through my history of writing music, I actually always used light language when if I had a melody and I didn't have words yet and I wanted to develop the melody, I would just make up words. And of course I was using it in a very kind of unconscious way, but I was still using it. And so when I discovered light language, it was like a video I saw, and I was like, what is this? And I didn't know what it was. There was no explanation. It was just the light language. And I was like, this I need to explore. And I dove into it. And it was instantly clear to me of like, oh, this is my thing. This is me. And from that moment, I could speak light language. I just didn't realize it, And so I was like, okay, I'm just pretending. Like I'm playing right now, And I let myself pretend, quote unquote, for like a month or so. And then I was like, okay, yeah, never mind. I speak light language. This is a real and authentic experience. And the light language and the light codes, they really, really made it clear to me that they were supposed to be working with me, and that I was supposed to be using them, and they were working with me in my dream work, and really consistently reminding me that like, you better integrate this into what you're doing, even though people might think it's really weird, because growing up, being on stage from a young age and having people project so much admiration for, oh, it's so beautiful what you do, and I love what you do, you really get bound in this role of like, I'm here to make people comfortable and to provide something that is entertaining and beautiful. And light language can, for those who are not, resonant with it, can be really weird and uncomfortable. And so there was so much unraveling that I had to do around like, I'm allowed to express my voice in a way that isn't beautiful and enjoyable and comfortable and easy and entertaining. I'm allowed to be radical in the way that I express myself. And so I started integrating it into my sound journeys. And then the YouTube thing happened kind of by itself. I try to like reconnect to how that even happened, but it it kept popping up, and I was like, oh, maybe I should do this. And then suddenly I had a video that I posted, and it was like, okay. And that unfolded really beautifully. And it's been a really beautiful platform for me to really express just myself and my being. And through that, it just was very natural for me to begin offering spaces for people to deepen their experience, not just with the codes that I offer, but with their own codes. So even, the vocal awakening that I do, which is one of the main offerings that I work with, that kind of also completely happened to me. I was creating some offerings, and I was making a little overview that I was going to put out, and they were mostly, sound and light healing, where I'm using my voice and, using sound and energy healing. And right before I sent it out, I just wrote vocal awakening. Like, I just added it and sent it and posted it. And I was like, what is vocal awakening? Why did I write that? And oh my God, I have to figure out what that is, because people are going to write me about that. I know it. And within a few hours, like, people are like, hey, can I book vocal awakening with you? And I'm like, okay, I don't know what that is. But I did know what it was, because the moment I sat down to let it come through, there was a very clear transmission and a very clear space. And I knew exactly what I had to do. Meaning, I knew that all I had to do was get out of the way, because again, the work that I do is not me. It's me allowing something to come through me that has a much greater wisdom than myself. So the vocal awakening has truly been a bigger part of my journey at the moment. And that's just because I feel like we are at a time where it's time for us to step into our truth, into our voice. Like, guru culture is over. That's not us anymore. We're here to explore and to transmit our divinity and our true nature. And I think that we have something within us, this divine imprinting, this luminous, ineffable essence. And I think we tend to really want to put words to it. And we have so many systems that put words to it and that categorize it. I'm like this, and you're like this, and this is, and I love astrology, and I love gene keys, and I love all of these things. But we do sometimes feel that in order to understand ourselves and to walk our path, we need to be able to put words to what we are and what we're doing. And my path has been one of like, we don't need words. Let it be. Let it unfold, because the infinite nature of what you are cannot be put into words, and it can't be explained, which is where light language comes through as the most beautiful bridge to taking that which is infinite in nature and ineffable and beyond description and beyond definition, and transmitting it into physical reality. And that has been incredibly expansive in just my own awareness, to even receive those frequencies and transmit them, even though I don't fully understand them, has expanded my own awareness and my own understanding of myself and of reality in ways that even at this moment I can't actually put into words. So it is it feels crude the way that I'm explaining it, because I know that it can't actually be explained. And I know that, of course, as a light language channel, it feels like you're just grasping, right, at these words, at these phrases. But it is also an honor and a privilege to try to put it into words and to try to capture and to bottle that force. So that's where I am right now, and that's what's calling, and that's what's guiding me.
Because it's truly an expression, isn't it, of something that is an experience. And like something you said at the beginning when you were talking about, just being in your innate, and it was just natural, and you allowed it to be. And I think that when we come into that space and you've been creative, and it allows, the creativity is what allows that opening for that to happen. If we're still staying in that rigid old construct, I suppose it doesn't allow us that freedom to express in a more playful way that isn't linear or written or understood. So we find it through the creativity, because we don't always know. We put a pen to paper, what it's going to look like, even if you have an image that you're copying from, or an object that you're drawing, you still don't really know until you've done it what it's going to look like. It emerges, and I feel that that's really what happens when we're in that creative space. So I think what you offer is allowing that space for people to reconnect with the vocal creativity. Yeah. And
Well, I was just gonna say, you know, people often ask me like, how can I connect with my codes and with my, you know, that inner essence? And like the simplest thing is, like you say, it's creativity. Like just be creative, and not with the intention of being productive and making something very important, but just be creative for the sake of moving a pen or a paintbrush on paper, or making sound, or moving your body. That is like that level of relaxation and playfulness that is cultivated within creativity is what opens our portal and our channel. So it's such an incredible practice in itself.
yeah, it really does open up that space for it to emerge. And I know people that I've met along my path who are just very rural, hippie types, and I'm like, oh, you're speaking light language then, that sounds like you're singing. Oh, is it? They're just so oblivious to it because it's just this natural thing that they do. They don't label it as such either. Like we've kind of come to labeling in the more like in this sort of online community, I suppose. But there are definitely those that it's just quite a natural thing. Something that you've mentioned as well is the ceremonies, so the plant medicine ceremonies. And that's something that gave me a lot of confidence actually in this, is when I see, shamans, and in those spaces where everyone is really held in a very sacred, safe space, speaking and what we might call as channeling light language. So I don't know if that was that when it really opened up for you, or this was just somewhere you were given a space to do it?
Yeah, well, so plant medicine for me was really one of I had been beginning to integrate my understanding of myself within, you know, a spiritual or conscious context, and, you know, meditation and dream work and yoga. But I still had a lot of trauma and PTSD and really, really heavy, dense frequencies and blockages in my system. And plant medicine, psychedelics in general, were really where I was able to go into that fully and transmute it and clear it. So that's really where I was able to fully, consciously, deliberately, and intentionally step onto my path and say, this is what I'm doing now. This is who I am. This is why I'm here. I can let go of the old stories. I can let go of attachments to needing to be this or needing to fulfill that role. Like, this is where I am. And so that was where I began with it, from a place of healing and integration. But because I was singing and because I was a singer, I was very fortunate and blessed to be in a space where I actually could share my voice in ceremony. And then the light language actually came later. So I feel that along that journey of really deepening into my own essence and really releasing some pretty heavy blockages and traumas, I was then kind of able to return again to that space, to ceremony, and transmit my voice, but in a totally different way. Because the first times I did it, I was singing songs that I'd written. And then when I kind of returned after deepening my relationship with medicine and also just with my own soul and my own essence, I then returned singing in light language and channeling. And I mean, there's definitely something very incredible that happens in those spaces and with those kinds of medicines with regard to the voice and with regard to opening the channel. And so I was also really guided and taught a lot about being a channel and using my voice and was able to integrate a lot of those ceremonial aspects into just my everyday life, being able to integrate just that space, that psychedelic space in itself into my own consciousness, and now when I'm having a session with someone, the experience, to put it simply, it's psychedelic. It's working within these realms that are not bound by any linearity, that are not bound by our five senses, and that can't quite be put into words. There's an awareness, there's an understanding that takes place that is quite out of reach, but that it's there and it's very powerful. And it's also holographic, meaning it's able to touch mental bodies, physical, emotional. It's able to move through multiple lifetimes. It's able to move through an individual and the collective. And so I feel that those spaces, light language, and of course the plant medicine spaces, even though they are obviously very unique and separate in their own ways, there is, in my own mind and understanding, there's a deep connection, and they feel to me very woven into one another. And I suppose that could be said to all things. I mean, light codes are woven into all that is, and can be found within all that is. But for me, that's been my personal journey, and that's something that has been a really big pillar in my life, and a very big part of my unfolding.
And you feel that, and because it's like that took you forward into, so it already existed within you, and it's allowed you that space to really feel, I can do this. This is why I'm here, and that security in the unknown. If you can be secure in the unknown.
Yeah,
You're held and supported.
absolutely. And being secure in the unknown, I feel that is the path that I'm on, and I'm not super interested in manifesting and creating my entire reality, and I'm manifesting in every moment by nature, but I'm really interested in fully yielding and surrendering to what is, and really, really allowing it to arise in the way it chooses to arise. And that's this notion of again, embodying the practice of being a channel. And it's not just something that I want to do when I'm in a space with someone, guiding and supporting them. It's something I want to embody in every moment in my waking and sleeping, dreaming reality. It's something I want to anchor into my whole being.
How do you feel that you feel that you've come to that? I'd love to know what sort of practices and what sort of brought you into that embodiment.
Well, I wouldn't say that I'm fully there. I think that's going to be a whole lifetime, but it is, I can feel in this moment, I am more anchored and at peace and embodied in just who I am, and also without the need, again, to describe it and to define it. I feel that integration is obviously very important to embodiment. We need to integrate all of these experiences we're having. And I think it's very difficult in the society we live in, because we're just so busy, and there's always input, there's always stimulation. And I think we can fall into this trap, and I have fallen into it very often myself on the spiritual path of just, oh, I need more. I want to learn this. I want to learn this. Let me read this book. Let me watch this content. Let me, and it's the path of improvement. And it's, of course, our seeking for knowledge, which is encoded into our DNA. We're going to do it. It's how we evolve. But for me, it's been how can I find complete contentment and wholeness in what is, and instead of improving upon this, integrate all of the aspects that I've maybe turned away from, integrate the shadows, and not with the intention of getting rid of them, but for really loving them, and not because I want to improve, but because I want to feel fully at peace with myself, because that to me is that's happiness. is not needing to seek all the time. And so it's interesting to try to even put into words the practice of embodiment, right? Because it is something that happens on a deeper level. I think really allowing time and space to integrate experiences is really powerful. Meditation is really powerful. Dream work, if that's something that's activated in certain people, is really powerful. But giving the space and time to revisit and reflect and really anchor in these experiences that are being had at every moment. And with regard to the light language, for me, it's been one of embodying my truth at every moment. So if I can sit in front of someone and channel light language for 30 minutes and be totally comfortable, why can't I then go speak to someone I know and be afraid to tell them what I really think about something? Because that was something that arose for me of like, I still cannot be in my truth, so how can I embody even more this path that I'm walking? So how can I honor my voice at every moment? Like at every moment, if I'm having a conversation and I feel that there's no service there for me, then there isn't for the other person. How can I step away from that in a way that is in integrity and honesty? It's like a Pandora's box, right? Like the second you begin to lift that lid and you look into it, you realize like, wow, I could spend all day just listening to my voice and listening to the way I speak and feeling into whether it's in integrity to myself or not. So it does, I think, require a deal of like awareness and devotion to the path itself. But again, it unfolds in its own way, in its own time. And some of us have more focus than others, and others like to take it more slowly. But I think connecting to that inner essence and being able to identify like what you feel like, what your frequency feels like, is really powerful because it creates a reference point. And I think many of us today, we get so programmed with other stories and so overstimulated with the content that we're receiving in every moment that we don't know what our own frequency feels like. And that's a big intention with these spaces that I hold of like, what is your frequency? You don't have to explain it, but can you feel it? Like, do you know what it's like? Can you close your eyes and settle into it? And that becomes this anchor in every moment. When you feel yourself drifting away, you can embody that. You don't even have to embody a practice or an ideal. You can just embody yourself, and that for me is what I'm about, is like, I just want to embody this. It doesn't have to be particularly special or interesting. I just want to embody like how I feel right now. Right now I feel kind of weird and anxious. So like I'll embody that, and by embodying that, I'll get back to that real essence, which is my true frequency, which is just in alignment with everything.
Wow. Yeah. Gosh, I'm just feeling that sinking in, because even that, it's like, right, let's take that moment to integrate that knowing of that natural state of embodiment, the natural flow of embodiment without force or fight. It's accepting, it's the acceptance and surrender, which is something you actually mentioned at the beginning as well. So lovely how that's come back around. So for everyone that really is also thinking, well, how do I also, feeling into the embodiment and the practice of that. Sometimes it's about grounding, isn't it, and being here in the earth, because for me, light language at the beginning, it felt like it's also galactic, and I was very focused on the different star beings and that sort of thing. And I then have come to realize there's a lot more to it than that. Yeah. So I'm wondering, do you find that it's a more of an earthly thing for you now as well?
Yeah, thank you for calling that in, because that's a really important aspect. I feel we can really get caught up in the upper chakras, so to speak, and really drifting off into the ether. And that's been a huge thing for me, is like the escapism, like you mentioned earlier, like wanting to just, oh, if I could just float away and, lose my body, everything would be fantastic. And I think for people who are very, very sensitive, it's quite a temptation to want to fall into that. And so again, the light language began as well, like very galactic and really like, oh, why don't I just live in the stars? That would be so much easier. And then realizing like, okay, but I'm here. I'm here because I chose to be here. And also feeling a deep connection to the earth, and realizing that those light codes are not emanating from one star in some galaxy. They emanate from all that is. They emanate from source itself. So what we experience as spiritual energy or light codes is not coming from one place. It's not coming from one end of the polarity. It's coming from everything at every moment. It comes from the earth that we walk on. It comes from a super deep meditative experience. It comes from your neighbor yelling at you. It's in everything. And that to me has really been an eye-opener, and it's allowed me to settle into like the beautiful ordinariness of being, because that was something that I resisted, like having such a magical experience as a child and having such an activated inner eye. Accepting just like mundane, everyday, simple ordinariness was really difficult, but I found to love it. Like, and working with, the 4 elements and the 4 directions, these really simple pillars within our physical reality, spending my mornings in prayer, facing the east, integrating my physical reality and doing my yogic practice towards the south, and turning to the west, and so just moving through all of these phases that represent different aspects of our reality. And I don't want to go into my own practice too much, just because I think that we tend to sometimes imitate what we hear and what we feel could be powerful. And I really think people should just go with what they feel is intuitively right for them. Whether it's working with elements or directions, or whether it's chopping wood and carrying water, like just doing these really earthy, basic practices. Like before you called, I was sitting here and like weaving on this little loom that I have. And I don't have like massive intention with it. But I've been using it because when I have these sessions that are really powerful, I have all this energy, and it's like, I almost am like, what do I do with this? This is wild. And so I sit down and I just weave for like an hour, and I don't talk and I don't think about anything. I just watch, my little, whatever it's called, I don't even know what it's called, weaving through the threads, and realizing like, wow, I'm integrating, everything is settling in. Or whether it's going and gardening, or whether it's making a meal with your family, this is actually where the magic happens, because it's where we take all that is up in the ether and all that is above, and we just filter it down into the body. And it is what embodiment is, right? It's bringing it into the body. So whatever that means, it can of course mean different things for different people, but for me it's like, I just want to like grow food, and I want to eat the food that I grow, and I want to, still have these really beautiful, multi-dimensional experiences. But I actually just want to like get out of all of these stories that have been pulling me into essentially seeking something that just isn't here right now. And that's, grounding in its embodiment.
Yeah, and it's so magical to grow your own vegetables, and there's so much magic here on earth, connecting with trees and different life forms that are existing here. People sometimes think, people that I've met and come into contact with, and I'm like talking to like a tree on a really, energetic level, and they're like, how, what's it saying? It's like, it's hard to put that into words because it's an energy thing, but I know that it's communicating with me, and we can really find that with the beings that are here, that just when we drop into that physicalness, that we are here and that we are also energy, and everything here is energy, and we're all a part of that because it is nature. We are nature. We can communicate with it as it,
Yeah,
rather than a separate entity altogether.
absolutely. Nature is such a teacher with regard to embodiment and grounding. Like, what do birds do? They sing and they build nests and they eat worms, and they go about whatever other bird things they do. I don't know, they're not like wishing they were somewhere else on some deep meditation retreat, like meeting a past life version of themselves. They're like, no, I'm gonna sing, I'm gonna open my throat, I'm gonna sing. And they're not singing with any specific purpose, they're singing because it's what they are, it's their essence. Like, that to me, like when I see a bird singing, like, that is light language. Those are light codes. That's pure. That's medicine. And then what does it do? It builds its nest and it goes on with its day. And when the music comes again, it stops and it sings. And like, that to me, that simplicity is absolute medicine, and it's so healing, and it's such an inspiration. And whenever I feel that I get pulled into, oh, I need to do this and I need to do that, oh, this person's doing that, I'm not doing, I go out in nature and I sit on the ground and I feel her energy and I feel her transmission, and I look at, like, what is she doing? She's not doing anything. She's just here. She's here and she's embodying herself immaculately, perfectly. And I really understand and know why, as a collective, we're moving back into nature, and people are moving back off grid, and they're building communities and they're starting to grow food, because as we move back, as we continue our unfolding into integration, and as this spiritual understanding of ourselves comes back online, nature is going to be an incredible guide for us, an incredible pillar for us. And we know that we need her. And so we're returning to her because she's waiting.
Yeah, definitely. Gosh, it's that intuition is switching on to communicate back into something that we've been pulled away from. We've been pulled away from nature, living in this particular format, and it enables that to reconnect. So when it does all fall away, we're already rooted back in, and people are finding their way back like a bird, navigating. And it's interesting you even actually brought up the birds, because actually earlier today I went for a walk before we had this call, and there's these 3 trees outside this house, and all the different birds, they were there singing. So I just stopped and I just listened to them for a while, because it was so incredible. All the different sounds, they all were sounding different, but they were all together in the tree, all these different species of bird. So that's really interesting you brought that up. Yeah, it's a very magical and healing vibrational resonance that they're emanating. And if you ever are out in nature, to just stop for a moment and to listen and just be present with that and experience it on a physical level, but also on an energetic level, and feel it through your body, what that feels like. Just a little bit of homework for everybody.
Yeah.
Try it. It's something that I can't even put into words, what that feels like, what that actually is doing and activating in the body, but it's beautiful. Yeah. So I don't know if you're feeling called. I feel like there's a good time for a transmission, if you feel ready, and can bring your own beautiful bird song to the table.
Kia shuturu kwa sikiatar. Kia sunutu ashar tiakao. Ia yao kunuti asher tiasar yawaku. Uyu kupuartesh. Tae sikiatar tumo awasiater. Shiashatri kiawao sur. Tiasher como ar kiaser yawao kutuar. Ishier. Ishier kiashao shumutur uapao kishiatar. Iayao como kuasher iasutru tuapar iashitri kiaser. Iawao kumukur. Iawao kumukur. Kiasitri tiashar uakaos. Kumukuater tiasher. Iasatri tiasaukur. Kiashantri kiarer. Aesausur. Kiasi shiatatrutush. Kiawawe kiasar. Iti artiantes. Kiatar tupu artiashan. Ikiar tuasariki. Iansar puatar tisher. Ki aus, kiasanti ar, ikiatar umur. Aetausur, aetarosur, ki ar tumusur kuasher ar. Isi iaker, kiatir taushutuntur ar, ki isitri ayawao kumu ar, iasitri tiashao shukur, iakau kumukur uasher, iasantru tiasera, iawao kumukuaker, ayewausi akir, iantater, kia au shunukuapa, I kuawesi, iukuakar, kia shantriti, iawawakar, iasatrutur, ialaur tushunturu ar, iakau kumukuasar tiasher, iakiakau kumukuasher, isi erkiar, isi shiater, ayawao kumukuater, iasar tiasher, kiater.
Thank you so much, Talitha. That was beautiful. And anybody there that is listening right now, you can just listen again if you need to come back to it and receive and allow this time to integrate as well what you receive, giving that space. And where will people be able to find you, and what offerings have you got at the moment if people would like to reach out?
So I'm currently offering one-on-one vocal awakening sessions. I'm also offering one-on-one light and sound healing. I do offer workshops usually every other month. Kind of depends on whether it's there or not. But so there's group workshops that are offered. I also do group monthly events over Zoom, and those are just also vocal awakening group events. And I hold little light and sound ceremonies with my partner. Those are over Zoom. And I hold soul song circles, which are for those of us who already have connected to their light language and actually are interested in sharing their voice. And that's just like a little space where we just channel for each other and whisper each other and talk to each other. And it's a really beautiful space. So I do not have a website at the moment. I'm still working on that, but my offerings can all be found on my Instagram page. And I do also share them on my YouTube channel. And of course, you can always reach out and ask with regard to different offerings, because I do different things every month and I change things up.
Cool, yeah. And I'm going to put all of these things and all of the links on the podcast description, so do look for them there. And of course, you can reach out on these sites, and if you have anything that came up over this time, I'm sure either of us are happy to talk to you, and so just reach out, and also leave a comment and a review. We'd love to see as well how you found this beautiful show and listening to this sacred transmission. So thank you again, and we'll see you again on the next Friday. Sending everybody loads of love. Thank you.
Thank you.